Hello and welcome back to the Library of Ruina Ranked. In this video, we'll be covering all of the Urban Legend pages. We finally get some proper utility pages and some incredible bombs, so let's get started. Our first card is Diversion. This is a 0 cost rolling 1-3/1-4 blunt. This page is another 0 cost and another unplayable card. The free hitting is better than average since it has double offensive dice, but that can't save it from being an F. Sharp Swipe is next. This is a 1 cost rolling 3-6 Pierce. Compared to handling work, you get half a power but it costs another light. Obviously, this is unplayable trash, another F. Back Attack is a 1 cost rolling 1-8 evade, 2-3 blunt, 1-4 slash. This is kind of like a 1 cost version of going first. The evade is fairly strong so it can counter quite a few pages, but if you end up clashing with the offensive dice then it'll feel pretty sad. Still, it's a passable 1 cost that I wouldn't be embarrassed to put into my decks, so I'm gonna give it a C-. Standoff is a 1 cost rolling 1-6 slash 2-3 blunt with the slash recovering 2 HP on hit. This page is a bit better than cards like Bite Off, but a single power on 1 doesn't inspire confidence 2 chapters later. Unfortunately, this is just another F. Outburst is a 2 cost rolling 3-5 blunt, 3-4 pierce, and on use, the user discards a page with the lowest cost to restore 2 light. A 0 cost with these rolls is actually pretty good. It'd still be weak because it can't outroll 2 costs, but discarding a page is an incredibly high price to pay without any page draw. I kind of wish this was a 1 cost because then it could be a playable late regen in later chapters, but it's just an F. Handling Work is our next page, rolling 2-6 3-4 slash 2-6 block, with both of the slashes boosting the max value of the next die by 3 on Clash Win. Compared to multi-hit, you're getting a slightly stronger 1 and a much stronger 2 and 3, but only 2 offensive dice. You need to be fairly careful when selecting your clash target, but if you lose, the page isn't embarrassing, and when it hits, it has 3 cost rolls, so I think that makes this a C+. Silent Knight is a 1 cost rolling 1-6 evade, 1-4 slash, 1-4 pierce, and it gives 2 endurance next scene on use. This page is used in endurance stack cheat strategies in endgame, but is otherwise a slightly worse version of Back Attack, so the things I said about that page apply here, but less so, and the ranking of D+ reflects that. Fence is another 1 cost that rolls 1-6 evade, 1-6 slash, 3-4 block, and on use it gives 1 protection to all allies next scene. This page's damage is quite low, and the protection isn't the most useful, but the roll range is passable at least, so I think it's a C-. Your Shield is a 2 cost rolling 2-4 block, 2-5 2-5 slash, with the block dealing 2 bonus damage on Clash Win. This page is held back by its poor rolls. You want to be clashing with this page because of the block die, but it's often ill-advised as you're quite likely to lose to a lot of pages, which means that this is just a D+. Combat Preparation is next. This is a 2 cost rolling 3-4 slash, 2-4 block, 1-8 evade, and it gives 2 endurance to all allies next scene on use. Again, this is used mostly in endurance stacking builds and isn't great here. Having a strong evade on 3 is nice because this page can act like 2 pages when you clash into 2 die pages, but the first 2 rolls are pretty abysmal. In a deck that stacks endurance, this would be a C+, but those are few and far between, so for most purposes, it's just a D. Blade Whirl is a 2 cost rolling 3-6 pierce, 2-5 1-2 slash. The pierce inflicts 1 paralysis next scene on hit, and the first slash inflicts 1 bleed next scene on hit. Compared to your shield, this page loses half a power, but has a bunch more power on the first die, has 3 offensive dice, and has better effects. This page is at its best as a free hitter since the effects are on hit instead of on Clash Win, but it can still clash reasonably. It's not incredible, but it's good enough to get a C+. Guardian is a 1 cost that rolls 1-5 blunt, 1-6 slash, and gives 1 endurance to all allies next scene on use. Compared to Standoff, you get half a power and a mass endurance effect in exchange for losing the 2 HP and a more consistent roll range. That's not great, but the mass endurance is enough to get it to a D- rather than an F. Suppress is our next page, being a 2 cost rolling 5-7 blunt, 2-4 pierce. This page is really similar to Overpower, losing 2 bleed for half a power on both dice. The power being stacked on 1 is nice, but the 2 is a bit of a liability, so I think it's just a C+. Avert is a 1 cost rolling 2-4 block 3-5 slash, with the slash inflicting 2 blinds next scene on hit. This page is significantly worse than Cooking Prep, losing 1.5 power on the block and trading to 2 bleed for the bind. Especially when you consider you get this page later than Cooking Prep, this page is decidedly bad and is a D-. Retaliate is a 3 cost rolling 1-10 evade, 4-5 3-4 pierce, with the evade boosting the first pierce's max value by 3. This is a pretty incredible page. It snuffs most attacks that enemies could throw out at this stage of the game with the evade, and then stacks a bunch of extra juice onto the pierce dice, and even if you lose the first clash, the dice aren't incredibly bad. This page is an instant 3 of in all of your decks, and is very deserving of an A- ranking. Law and Order, unfortunately, is not deserving of that ranking. The 0 cost rolls 2 to 6 slash and deals 2 bonus damage on clash win. Strictly better than Gather Intel, but not by much, as clashing with this page isn't recommended. This is another F. Fierce Onslaught is a 1 cost rolling 2 to 3 pierce, 2 to 3 slash, 1 to 6 pierce, and on use the user discards a page with the lowest cost. This page is a fairly mediocre discard outlet, as the roll range isn't very good. It free hits decently, but it's just a D in your discard deck and an F anywhere else. Wait Up is our first playable light regen card. It's a 0 cost that rolls 2 to 3 pierce and restores 1 light on use. On your speed characters, this page can let you keep casting bomb pages for a little longer, but it doesn't really reach its full potential until a bit later. Even so, as a light regen, it's fairly solid and is a B. Gamble is another discard outlet that costs 1 light. This one rolls 2 to 6 slash, 2 to 6 splint, and of course, discards a page with the lowest cost on use. The rolls here are much better than Fierce Onslaught, being comparable to many 2 costs at this stage. In a discard deck, this is a solid B- and an F everywhere else. Daring Decision is a 3 cost rolling 4 to 8 slash, 4 to 8 pierce, 3 to 5 blunt, and on use, you discard all pages from hand. The roll range here is incredible, but the on-use effect keeps it out of any standard decks. Obviously, this shines best in a margin deck, where you can keep spamming this page without needing to worry about pages in hand, and is an A- there, as it is in a brawl deck, but it's an F anywhere else. Stay Calm is a 1 cost rolling 2 to 4 slash, 2 to 3 pierce, 2 to 3 blunt, and the user draws a page when they discard this one. This page is supposed to negate the downside of discard outlets, but it messes with margin, so you can't use it there, and there isn't really a reason to run discard page outside of a margin deck, so that's mostly useless text. Interestingly, the roll range is almost identical to Fierce Onslaught, losing only half a power and shifting a bit more power into the first die, so this page is a D in any deck. The Art of Rapid Steps is next. This is a 1 cost rolling 1 to 8 evade, 2 to 8 slash. This page compares nicely to back attack, with the same evade die on 1 and the same damage, but trades back attack's 2 weak dice for a single fairly strong slash die, meaning that you can actually win clashes with some reliability with this page, which makes it a B. Slice is a much more disappointing 1 cost, rolling 1 to 3, 1 to 4 slash, 1 to 3 pierce. Having a lower roll range than Stay Calm but without any additional effect, there's no reason to ever run this page, and it's just an F. Scratch That is a 3 cost rolling 5 to 10 blunt, 5 to 10 slash, 5 to 10 blunt, but on use, all the dice on the page lose 2 power. Rolling 3 to 8, 3 to 8, 3 to 8 is still really high, and triple offensive dice is really nice. This slots nicely into all your decks as a solid A, but is an A+ in a brawl deck due to being able to abuse the rolls without the power loss. Speaking of, Brawl is our next page, rolling 3 to 6 blunt, 2 to 8, 3 to 5, 3 to 6 slash, with the blunt restoring 1 light on hit, and on use, all the dice on this page get swapped out for a dice on a page in hand as long as it's a 4 cost or lower. Obviously, you need to build around this page really heavily, as copying anything that isn't a 3 or 4 cost page is kind of a disaster. The dice themselves aren't incredibly high, but there are 4 of them, and if you hit the blunt, the page acts like a pseudo 2 cost, which is pretty great. Overall, Brawl has the rolls of a B+, but it acts as an A- page on average if you build your deck properly. LNGU is a 2 cost rolling 4 to 6 blunt, 3 to 5 slash, both inflicting 1 paralysis next seen on hit. This page has the same roll average as Gamble and Suppress, but has 2 paralysis added on, which is a pretty great effect, especially considering that it's on hit rather than on clash win. That makes this a solid 2 cost to C+. Starting Out Lightly doesn't get the same treatment. This page is a 1 cost rolling 2 to 4 blunt, 2 to 6 slash. Pretty mediocre rolls and no effects, just a D+. Shocking Blow is a 2 cost rolling 4 to 12 blunt. Pages with a single strong die are generally pretty bad because you only get a single clash and need to tank the rest of the opponent's page, and it doesn't free hit well since there's only a single die. This page is also fairly inconsistent since it has such a wide roll range. This page hoses ranged pages pretty well, but it's just a C-. Destructive Impact is a 2 cost that rolls 1 to 15 slash. This is the same as Shocking Blow but more inconsistent, so it's also a C-. Cut In is a 2 cost that rolls 3 to 6 blunt, 1 to 6 evade, 3 to 4 pierce. Compared to LNGU, this page loses half a power and paralysis on both the offensive dice to get a 1 to 6 evade die wedged in between. Overall, that's worse, especially since the evade is pretty weak, and if it was a block die, I could see this being a C+, but for crimes of evade die, it's just a C. Crush is another 2 cost rolling 3 to 6, 3 to 5 blunt, with the first blunt inflicting 2 bleed next seen on hit. Again, comparing this page to LNGU, you're losing half a power on the first die and the paralysis on both dice for 2 bleed, which is very much not worth it. This page is also a step down from Cut In and is a C-. Our last card is Loosen Up, a 0 cost rolling 2 to 6 blunts and restoring 1 light on hit. Compared to Wait Up, you're gaining 1.5 power, but the light regen isn't guaranteed. I personally prefer this one since you're not going to be clashing with your light regen at this point in the game, and the extra damage is nice. I'd say it's on the same tier as Wait Up, and as such is a B. In the next video, we'll be starting to cover the Urban Plague pages. Since Urban Plague has over double the pages of Urban Legend, I'll be splitting it up over 3 videos. It'll be an interesting spread, with the first video covering the Carnival, Full Stop Office, and Dawn Office, the second video covering the Gaze Office, the Kurokuma Clan, and the Musicians of Bremen, and the last video covering the Wedge Office, Lovetown, and the General Receptions. I'll see you soon, and as always, thank you for watching.